This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
One of the most dramatic scenes in all of Imperial Rome, the Arch of Titus, depicting the Roman legion carrying away various vessels, various kiyum of the Beis Hamikdash, including the iconic menorah. Now, of course, for the Jewish people, even a Arch of Triumph for Titus, this is an Arch of Triumph for us. Because as we know, when Titus destroyed the temple in the year 70, 9 years later his father Vespasian dies. He's only the emperor for about 2 years, because ultimately he sees two terrible destructions: the destruction of Pompeii and then the destruction of Rome. There were terrible fires in Rome in 81. So he only ruled for about 2 years. There are three basic questions or tradition of the menorah, from the menorah on the Arch of Titus. Number one, Rashi tells us in Parsha's Chumash that yes, the menorah had a base like a cake box on the bottom, but Rashi says the menorah had legs to it. We don't see any legs on the bottom of the square of the menorah. Number two, the Rambam writes, even though Ibn Ezra, in his lengthy commentary on Shumas Tzaddik, says the menorah was semicircular, nevertheless, the Rambam, in his depiction of the menorah, and Rabbi Avram ben Rambam, they both say the menorah was diagonal, was straight. So this is not necessarily in sync with our tradition of the menorah. And third of all, if you look carefully, there's an image of a darkoin on the base of the menorah. Darkoin is a Hebrew word for dragon, which was an idolatrous image, which was not on the menorah. So the question is to reconcile this picture of the menorah with the authentic ancient traditional Jewish people. There are four basic approaches to that. Number one, the Admor of Chabad writes that this was not the menorah of the Beis Hamikdash. The menorah was a very common item in Roman homes, and their menorahs may or may not have looked like the menorah in the temple. They definitely had idolatrous images on it, and therefore his conclusion is this, in fact, in no way even resembles the menorah in the temple. The second approach, Rav Herzog wrote a scholarly article on this, and he has what he calls a very daring and courageous approach, namely that when the Romans carried away the menorah, it broke in travel, and when they fixed it according to their approach and their derech, and when they fixed it, they didn't make legs, and they put idolatrous images on it. There's a Sefer Elef Hamogain, which says two important. Number one, are we subject to even reconcile our tradition with the tradition of the image depicted over here? Why should we assume they attempted to sculpt it in a manner of accuracy? And furthermore, and more importantly, who made this arch? Titus never saw the arch. Titus died in the year 81. This arch was not built until years later by Domitian, his brother, who made it in Titus's honor. By then, we don't necessarily know if they even saw or used the actual menorah to sculpt this image. But one thing we do know, in Avos to Rabbi Nosson it says that the menorah lays somewhere here in Rome, and we await the day of the coming of Mashiach, which will reveal itself in the gates of Rome, where we'll see once again the true and accurate menorah.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.